Welcome everyone to the Deltek Vision CRM Overview webcast. My name is Brian Lemie, and over the course of the next 30 minutes I'm going to take you through the Vision CRM module and how that's being used by our clients to handle the ongoing communications with their clients as well as business development activities. Again, all lines have been muted to prevent background noises. There'll be quite a few of us here on the webcast today. So I think it goes without saying that we're really in some tough economic challenges, especially with the economy. I mean, it's no secret, and as we look at the press and the news and the various things that are going on within the economy, I mean, for our businesses, we've got to really look at how we're going to navigate this, how we're going to sustain our growth, how we're going to make sure that we're taking care of our clients, which are the key components to our revenue stream. So really, in tough economic times, there's a lot of tough questions that we're really forced to look at and we're forced to answer. And so for many of our organizations, as we're looking at our client bases and our business development activities, those are some of the things that we're trying to figure out. How are we going to do this? How are we going to make sure that we are finding enough business to sustain the levels we need to sustain? And to sustain those levels, we've got to make sure that we're winning as much business as possible. So how are we addressing and making sure that we are as competitive as possible? Also within that, once we we win those clients, how do we make sure that we're taking care of them as new clients, but also the clients that we currently have, so that we're not losing those clients and that they're not deciding to do business with others, or put projects on hold or scale projects back. So those are many of the really tough questions and tough challenges that we're looking at from the business development standpoint and working with the relationship with our clients. Those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Now, we've got a mixed audience here, so some of you might be familiar with Deltek's products or currently using a Deltek product and using Vision and evaluating the CRM module today. For those of you that might be newer to Deltek or just learning about and researching, just really briefly, we're an organization that focuses exclusively on project-based businesses. That's what we do. That's all we do. And so when you look at the commonality of our over 12,000 clients and the focus of our over 1,200 employees, it's around organizations that their business is focused around projects. You can also read about Deltek with various industry and third-party analysts that I've listed there, and some of those you might have heard of. So you can just do a little bit more research about Deltek and what we do. So today we're going to be talking about the Vision CRM module, and as we look at this with many organizations and many tools that people are using from a CRM standpoint, one of the big challenges with the tools, and there's a lot of great CRM tools that are in the marketplace today, but there's a couple key challenges with many of those. One is that a lot of times they're disconnected, so they're not tied in with the other tools and systems that our organization uses, so that we're getting a complete picture of everything that's going on within our clients. Communications, what previous projects have we done with those clients? What are we currently proposing? Are there any proposals on the table? What's all the communications that have happen with those clients, etc. So that's one of the challenges when that's disconnected. Where that really comes into play is when those of us that are responsible for the overall organization, whether we're needing to generate reports or give information to our executive teams on getting visibility into all aspects of the business. Well, that's one of the key advantages with Vision, and how everything is tied together in a single solution, single database, including what we're going to talk about today, the CRM component. Well, that's enough of me kind of talking about it. Let's go ahead and we're going to take a look at it. So your screen is going to flicker here for just a second as I get my desktop shared out for you to see. So just for those of you that might be using Vision, you've seen this before, the Vision dashboard, where I can have the various components and aspects that are important to me. If you haven't seen the dashboard before, what the dashboard allows me to do is put those kind of components or data points on the things that are important to me if I'm responsible for the client relationships or business development activities within my organization. A lot of times when I make the comment dashboard, the first thing that pops into our head might be a car dashboard. And where a car dashboard shows me the key pieces of data and information I need to operate the car, a business dashboard does that exact same thing for me. So if I'm responsible for the business development activities of the business, I can see where are we at with pipeline. So, as head of, business development or somebody responsible for that, it's my job to make sure that we've got enough business coming in the door for all the mouths we have to feed within the organization. But it also allows me to easily configure and put the things that are important to me within that. So if there are other dash parts and pieces that I want to add within the organization, it's very easy for me to go ahead and add that. Whether I'm wanting to track, my specific clients or opportunities or proposals that I'm currently working on, it makes it very easy for me to go ahead and configure that and add those pieces to the dashboard that I want to see, when I'm working within the tool. So just kind of a few things on that. Well, let's go ahead and start talking about really those key pieces of how do we handle the the contacts and communication and everything that's going on within our client, as well as the business development activities. So where we'll go ahead and start with that is we'll take a look at our clients, really the center of the universe within our organization. And one of the challenges that I've faced in previous careers and lives that I've worked at within organizations, and I'll kind of share some of those with you. As I've said, my life can sometimes be a warning to others. And one of those challenges we had was this idea of visibility on our clients, or you might have heard the term a 360-degree view of the client. Well, when one of our executives wanted to go out and meet with a client, the challenge was, where in our systems, tools, and people within the organization did she have to go to get a picture of what was going on with the client, what was everything that was happening? And in this organization I worked in, there wasn't a place. We had to pull from multiple tools, multiple data sources, multiple people, and what we ended up doing was putting together a PowerPoint slide deck for her so that she could review, what are the ongoing projects that we have for the client, what's happening from an accounting standpoint, where's that information, what's all the communications, are there any outstanding issues or current issues with the current project, is there other work that we're proposing to this client, and where do we stand on that, so that when she walked into the client, she had be able to talk about what work was currently going on, be able to address some of the issues that she knew was going to come up, also use that opportunity to pitch more opportunities in business for the firm. So those are some of the challenges. But again, with a tool like Vision, because we encompass all aspects of the business within a single tool, I can come within my Client Info Center here and have visibility into everything that is going on within our clients. So just to, as we start stepping through this, a few things that I wanted to kind of point out and highlight is, things like parent-child. And what I mean by parent-child is I can set up and have that relationship. So if this client is actually a member of a larger organization, or this is one of the subsidiaries, I can easily set that up, link those so that I've got that information, so everything can roll up to the parent. Or I can just look at, what are those projects that we're pitching for the subsidiary, etc. So a few things there. Also with things like setting up and tracking all of our clients, and also clients by location, and whether that client is located at the headquarters location or various other offices. So again, as we're needing to have all the information around our key contacts, I can have that, whether they're locations, subsidiaries, just to get that picture and really that idea of the relationship tree of, what's the parent, what's the sub, what are the locations, who are our various contacts and people at those various locations, so I know exactly who I'm talking to and what I am working with. Also then within these contacts, we can set up and maintain things like the activities. And when we look at activities are logged as items, whether it's a phone call, a meeting, an email that went out to the client, but it's that history of communications that happen with this contact and the various contacts within our clients. And one of the really important things is that when we enter activities, or when we put these, communications, or we had a phone call, or I had a meeting, and I tie that to a contact, it knows the relationship of that activity, what contact it's tied to, who that contact is tied to from a company standpoint, whether it was in regards to a certain project or opportunity. Why does that become important? Well, that becomes important because everything rolls up to the top. So if I had a conversation with Paul Collier here in regards to a specific project that we were working on, and I log that, well, a lot of times if I'm trying to go back and look for the notes around that conversation, we talked about something in regards to scope, and now the question I'm back, where do I go look for it? Well, many times I don't necessarily remember, well, what was the meeting or what was the specific project? I might remember, I know I talked with Paul Collier, but more importantly, many times we know, well, who is the client? So what that allows us to do is roll everything up. Let me show you what I mean by that. If I go and look back at our client, Atlantic Research, and I look at the activities, what this shows me is all activities that have been logged in some method or form to Atlantic Research. Here I can see all the activities that are logged with the contact Paul Collier. Here's one with Susan Grafton. I can also see what they're logged in relation to. Was it an opportunity? Was it a project? Was there a show that they attended? And that's where we log that from. So it just allows me to see that information. So again, no matter where I'm looking to see the history or the communications, whether I want to start at the top at the client, or I know, I do know that I had the conversation with Paul Collier, I can look at those, those activities, or I might even know, well, I know it was in regards to a specific project, so when I go look at the, the project, I can see all of the activities that were logged within that project. So it makes it very easy for me to put those in and tie those in place. And when it's time to, log another activity, it's very easy whether I'm at the, project level, whether I'm at the contact level, whether I'm, no matter what level, when I log it, it populates that it knows, I can have Paul Collier, who's the primary contact, what the project was. Paul Collier's tied to Atlantic Research, is tied to the client, and everything is in place. And I can go ahead and start to log notes or the activity depending on the types, and things like types can be configured, whether it was a meeting, a phone call, we did the proposal pitch, etc., etc. I'm going to talk a little bit later on another way that activities can be created from Outlook, but just wanted to give you an idea on how we can set all that up, how we can look at those activities again with the multiple levels, whether I'm looking at that at a specific contact or I'm looking at it for everybody. I also have the ability when it comes time to finding that, because logging the activities is really the first part. Finding it is the next challenge, because great, I know we had a conversation or there was a phone call that we had with Paul Collier, and I can look through and you can imagine that over the lifetime of the client, if we log phone calls and meetings and various conversations that we have in regards to projects or opportunities, I can develop quite a list and database of the various activities and communications that have happened with this client. So I also have the ability to easily filter this and find the specific things that I'm looking for. So again, if I'm wanting to filter it by certain projects or contacts, or I know the rough date that these happened, or in this case, let's just say I just want to look at all phone calls. I can easily filter that list and just see, well, what are all the things in regards to phone calls that happen, and start to find or filter that list down to find exactly what I'm looking for and what I need. Okay, so just one component there. As I talked earlier about the idea of CRM tools and systems, I said one thing is it's used to track and maintain and look at the contact history, all of our contacts and the communications and emails and phone calls, etc., that happen from our clients. One other component to that is looking at things like opportunities, our business development aspects. And one of the big challenges with many CRM tools that are out in the marketplace today is many tools are designed for product-based businesses. What do I mean by product-based businesses? Well, when you look at many of the CRM tools, again, they have the contact management component to them. But then when you're wanting to put together things like quotes or proposals or service estimates, again, with many of those tools being designed for companies that had inventory, where you load in an inventory, you load in the pricing, and you load in a quantity, a lot of times that really doesn't fit for a project-based business to put together the proposal with timelines and what are the phases and stages and what are the resources that are going to be needed, and is there a certain rate that we're using for these resources, or how are we going to bill this. So many times what happens is organizations go back to their spreadsheets or documents that they're putting their pricing in and just attach them to the contact management tool. Well, while that works many times, there's really kind of two challenges to that. One, now the expensive CRM tool that was designed to handle our sales process and business development activities, that whole capability of the tool of putting together proposals and quotes and pricing estimates, we're not able to take advantage of that because it doesn't price it out like a project-based business does. The other challenge to that is then getting visibility into those opportunities. When the data is all locked within documents and spreadsheets that's attached, it's very hard to kind of report across the tool and system for information that we might want to see in regards to opportunities. Well, why do I bring that up? Well, I bring that up because obviously Vision is designed for a project-based business, and the business development activities and the opportunities for a project-based business. A couple things that I wanted to highlight. One, we have the ability to set up a promotional project. Well, where can we use a promotional project? Well, many times on projects, especially some of the larger opportunities that we go after, there's a lot of kind of pre-sales or business development activities that happen where we might use billable resources, or we rack up a lot of expenses in travel, in going to meetings and putting proposals and things together. Well, I can set up a promotional project and track those expenses and costs as part of our business development activities. So while it was great that we went after this $1 million contract with our client, and we know we're going to get $1 million, and we know what our costs are to do the work on the $1 million contract. What were our costs in pursuing the $1 million contract? How many plane tickets did we have to buy? How many different trips did we have to do? Was there certain things we had to go get and from an expense standpoint to win the business? How many hours were put in? If I a lot of times used a resource that is typically billable or works on revenue generating work, and I had to pull them off revenue generating work for a week while they put together proposals and prototypes for me, how much of their time was spent and how much is their time worth. What that then does is really can feed back into the true cost. So if I spend an additional $15,000 in expenses in going after the $1 million opportunity, well, I want to know what those costs are. So I have the ability to set that up and track those costs in regards to that. Also with things like stages, so that you can set up and track all of your various stages. Again, this can be configured so that you have your sales process that's built in. So your terminology of this is how it flows through, and this is how we forecast opportunities as they go through our process. That is easily configured to use your terminology. So whatever stages you use, easily configured. The next thing I want to look at, you have talked a little bit about this quoting process, or in Vision's terms, it uses the term service estimate. And when we want to put together our cost estimate and structure for our client, again, a lot of times because of the complexity or having to look and say, well, we don't have inventory items, we've got people that we're going to use, and how much of their time is going to be spent. We have also got expenses, or we might have subcontractors that we've got to use, or work that we're subbing out, and we might have certain units or pieces of equipment that we're going to put against this project, but it's a combination that we put these together. So Vision Service Estimate is designed to do exactly that, but not only to really understand, well, what's the cost to our client going to be for this proposal, but also understanding what our costs are going to be. And this is where I talk a little bit about the increased competition. I'll be the kind of first to admit, back in the days before competition was a lot fiercer than it is now. When I would put together proposals and service estimates for my clients, I'd put it together and have a rough understanding of what our costs were. But once I looked at it, I might pad it by 10% to give myself a nice buffer and make sure that my costs were protected or my margin was protected. And as competition started to increase, that buffer, I didn't have the liberty to use it as much, because if I was proposing a job to a client for $50,000, I might say, my costs are probably roughly 40. Yeah, I'll bid it at 50. Yeah, that's a good buffer. I'm good to go. Well, the problem was, if one of my competitors came in and bid it at 45,000, well, now I've used my buffer, and my buffer might have been overinflated, or I might want to say, well, then I'll bid 40. Well, then what does that do? Is that dipped into my cost? So when we put these proposals together, using Vision's various cost categories, as well as the various billing rates that I can set up, I can understand as I put this together of how many hours am I going to need for my architect, and what is my cost rate on an architect and my senior consultant or an engineer, designer, etc. We know that there's certain expenses that we're going to have, and it starts to put together what my cost estimate will be, as well as what the billing estimate for the client would be, and then looking at our margins to understand that. So as I get into more of those competitive situations and I want to play with the numbers to give my client the best price possible, but also protect the firm's bottom line and our margins, and not necessarily go after business that I'm doing I'm doing over cost, where I'm eating it, or at break even projects, I can have that visibility and start to look at that. Also, one of the other keys, as I mentioned before, a lot of times when we put these things in like documents, whether it's a document or a spreadsheet, and we attach them into our CRM tools, that data and that information is locked within the tool. With Vision, because the data is in the tool, it's in the system, we've got visibility into that, where we can start to put what we term is resource forecasts. And this is something that's actually addressed in the resource planning webcast, if you want to take a look at that or even download that piece, where we actually talk about resource forecasting. Why I bring that up and point that out a little bit is because we're logging into the tool how many potential hours are going to be needed for our architects and engineers, etc. This can give our teams and project managers or executives visibility, and based on all the opportunities that are out there and the amount of hours that we're proposing for architects, how many possible architect hours are we proposing, and what's out there, and do we have enough architects to handle all these hours, or is are we going to run into a backlog situation, or really what's going on? So it really gets into a complete visibility for our teams. So that's a little bit on the service estimates there. As I talked about, logging certain things in communications and pieces within the tool, it's very easy for me to go in and generate emails from within the tool or system. So if there are certain emails that I want to generate, but many times the tool that most of us probably use is our email tool, or in this case, I'll look at Outlook, where we generate communications and emails in regards to whether it's a project, an opportunity, etc. Well, Vision integrates with Microsoft Outlook so that we have the information and we can see that. And let me kind of show you a few things there. It integrates with the Vision address book. So when all of our contacts and people within Vision are stored there, instead of me having to have duplicate contacts or go look for those, it makes it very easy for me just to do searches to find the specific people I need. So if I'm wanting to send an email to Paul Collier, there I can find Paul and go ahead and and send him that email. So we'll just say we'll offer to send Paul to lunch. Lunch I am buying. We'll say Brian, and we'll go ahead and send and create that activity within Vision. And what it's done is it's automatically, logged everything. It's realized Paul Collier's with Atlantic Research. If there was a specific opportunity I wanted to log that to, or a project, etc., I absolutely can. In this case, I'm just offering to take Paul to lunch. So we'll just go ahead and say OK and send that email. So just kind of a few things where I can use Outlook. Also then, from a reporting standpoint, various reports that I've got. So from opportunities, if I'm wanting to put together, opportunity forecasts. So even, for example, like a quarterly forecast where I can see based on certain projects on a quarter by quarter standpoint, what is the revenue that we are forecasting and looking at, and when is that revenue going to hit. So we've got many of those components and reports as well. Also, for those that this question comes up a lot, is in regards to putting together things like mailing labels. Very easy to generate those, including many of the couple of the standard Avery label file formats, so that we can, we want to do a mailing list. We want to send out our, the Christmas cards to all of our clients, to just pull all our clients and contacts, generate the labels, and get those pieces sent out quickly and easily. So just a few things there. So with that is kind of our quick tour of the Vision CRM module. Again, showing you a couple things in one, how Vision CRM piece can be used to not only handle the communications and activity logging and history that we have with our clients, and everything that goes on from the projects that we're working on, emails, communications, phone calls, etc., so that we've got a true history and visibility to our clients, but also from a opportunity and putting together estimates or proposals, so that we're tracking the opportunities from a business development standpoint, what stages they're going through, what we're doing, but also more competitive and accurate service estimates, so that we're seeing what resources and what we're putting on the project, what our costs could be for the project, so that I can balance that margin against as competitive a price as possible to win the business, so that I really understand, yep, this is the best possible price I can give our client to do this work, still protecting the firm's bottom line, especially in a real tough economy where we want to protect that bottom line as much as possible, but being as competitive as possible to win the business with increased competition. So hopefully that gives you an idea on what the CRM module does for our clients using Vision. You can find more information at deltek.com/vision, where you can find additional flash demonstrations, and including a recording of this webcast, so if there were others within your organization that wanted to see that. If you did have any questions, I'll give you my contact information. Again, my name is Brian Lemie with Deltek, and my email address is listed there. So based on doing a nice quick 30-minute overview for you, just thought give you my contact info. If there were additional questions or things that you had in regards to the CRM module, please feel free to drop me an email. We'd be more than happy to answer those questions for you. With that, again, thank you for spending 30 minutes with us to take a look at the Vision CRM Overview webcast. Again, I'm Brian Lemie with Deltek, and thank you for your time.